everyone. Welcome. Starting a bit later than planned, but here we are. Welcome to The Edge, a show that's part of the Pulse, which is part of the New Black. In case you didn't know, but of course you know, because a lot of you here are regulars. But anyway, thank you for joining today, this afternoon, and being a part of this conversation with me. So we're going to get into the things, because The Edge, in terms of this show, you get to call in, you get to share your opinions on the things that are happening currently in society. I pose a question, and I'm hoping that you can help me to answer it, because we are at the edge of a whole new world, no Aladdin. And, you know, it's like being at the edge of that cliff. Are we going to soar, or are we just going to drop down? And currently, sometimes, most of the time, it looks like we're going to drop down. I frequently say, I don't know if we're ever going to be free, but I hope we are. And well, like I said, we're going to get into the things. And I wasn't here last week because I was doing an event with Akala in Birmingham, and that was brilliant. And that kind of ties in with the conversation that I want to have today about misogyny. How do we solve an issue? It's beyond an epidemic, right? How do we solve the issue of misogyny? And whose issue is it to solve? Because oftentimes when we're talking about things like racism, people might say, well, it's for white people to solve. It's for the people who benefit from it to solve it, because the powers that be know how it was put into place in the first place. And when we think about misogyny, when we're thinking about femicide, when we're thinking about all of these things that are happening, violence against women and girls across the world, oftentimes the pushback you get is, well, boys get hurt too, men get killed too. Yeah, exactly. Who's hurting and killing them predominantly? Not solely, but primarily, who's also killing the men and the boys? Men, boys. So how do we solve this? And is it a case of looking at it as purely just how do we solve misogyny, or are we looking at something greater? But I actually think it all ties in together, even when we are thinking about violence that even happens to men and boys. We are still essentially looking at misogyny, because we live in a femme-hating society. And I really want to delve deeper into that. I saw a video of Dr. Umar. Some of you might love Dr. Umar. That's good for you. Not really my bag, although I'm becoming more open to the idea of being in conversation with him. But I saw a video of him the other day, and, because he speaks with such conviction, people take what he says to be true. Maybe it's the same for me. Maybe I also benefit from the same phenomena. Like, you say things with enough passion and people will believe you. Anyway, what he happened to be saying was along the lines of, the reason that men are how they are these days, and they're not surviving or they're not thriving in relationships, is because they're being too emotional. They're being like their partner. So he's talking from a very heteronormative perspective. Heteronormative meaning he's setting heterosexuality as the normal thing, as the central thing, as the default. So he says, men are behaving the way that they're behaving, or their relationships aren't thriving because they're behaving like women. So they are in a relationship with somebody, she's being emotional, and instead of them to be a man and to be rational, they start being emotional as well. So you've got two females in the dynamic, and nothing gets solved. These women who are primarily a result of, what did he say, something like, or men, these people who are primarily a result of absent fathers, which I just think is such a dog whistle term. These people who are a result of absent fathers, they are triggering each other. He uses these words. People see doctor at the beginning of his name. He put some alphabet letters after his name, and everyone goes with it. So I thought, let me just see the comments. Maybe somebody else is also picking up what I'm picking up. Nope. Everybody in the comments were like, oh, hi, everyone. Glad that you're joining. I'm seeing everyone saying in the comments, Oh, yes. I'm glad somebody said it. Men are behaving like females these days. Men are being like, they're being too emotional. They're not thinking logically and rationally. Are women the one blowing up the world? This man that we're about to talk about, Shamar Elkins, killed 8 children, 7 of his own children and another child, 8 children. Mass shootings we mainly see involve men, right? The violence that we see, for the most part, although we could talk about that recent Mayfair incident, but I don't know enough about it to delve into it now, but that is a conversation to be had down the line. But primarily the violence that we see playing out, if we're talking about youth violence, if we're talking about quote unquote gang violence or whatever, we're looking at men and boys primarily, not solely. I keep stressing this. Are you saying that that's a result of no emotions, or would you be open to the idea that it's in fact the result of men and boys not being encouraged enough to feel the spectrum of their emotions, to accept and embrace the spectrum of their emotions in a healthy way? So when they say women are emotional, I always think that it comes from a place of a lack of sense and a lack of understanding about how we work as human beings. And of course, there are the things that we are socialized into, but people try to present it as, oh, it's just natural. Women are naturally emotional. Women are naturally nurturing. Or have we been in a society for so long, have we been in a society for so long that encourages women and girls to have nurturing tendencies and to express their emotions more so than they encourage men and boys to show their emotions? You see what I'm saying? So I just feel like there are so many things to consider here, but hearing that and seeing people praise Dr. Umar, I just found it really ridiculous. I have to be honest. I just found it really ridiculous. And it was mainly women. No surprise there. It was mainly women that were agreeing with him. Like, yeah, men are behaving like females. And I don't know what all of that means, but I just felt to share. Anyway, like I said, we're going to get to one of the callers who agreed to join me in conversation today. We're going to have Holly, who is a psychotherapist, to talk to me about this. But before we get into that, let me just read you a little bit about what we're actually looking at here. So most of you might have heard by now that there is such a thing as a network, like a group chat called ZZZ, as in sleeping. So CNN recently did an expose exposing a global rape academy, and they showed shocking group chats, men encouraging one another to drug and assault their wives. And wives is so important because obviously when we're talking about the myth of men protecting women, that's, often what a lot of things are kind of purported as, like you need a man's going to protect you, Yet here's this group chat where men who are married are giving each other tips on how to drug their wives who have already agreed to be with them, and swap tips on getting away with it. So men from around the world gathered on the ZZZ group chat to swap advice on drugging and then filming the sexual assault of their partners while unconscious. The abuse, shared via video and pictures in this group of nearly 1,000 users, was treated as a commodity. The world was confronted by this form of internet-enabled abuse in 2024 during the mass rape and drugging trial of Dominique Pellicot and 50 other men in southern France. It was on a so-called dating website in a chat room called Without Her Knowledge. So Dominique Pellicot was the husband of Giselle Pellicot. And Giselle, he drugged and raped her over 200 times. And he invited at least 70 men to also come to his home to rape his wife. And her hair was falling out. So many things were happening and she couldn't figure out why. So she'd go to the doctor constantly trying to figure out what was happening. And it was a result of the the drugs that he was using and also just the abuse that she was encountering. So there was another porn site called motherless.com, and it's a home to more than 20,000 videos of so-called sleep content uploaded by users with hundreds of thousands of views. The website, which had around 62 million visits in February alone. 62 million views in February alone. And apparently that was a quiet month. That was actually a quieter month than other months. And the core audience is in the United States, and it describes itself as a moral, free file host where anything legal, I don't know how legal that is hosted forever. There's an issue here, clearly. The women, you're married to these women, you take these vows to protect these women. In fact, other women shame single women, or married women shame single women for being single. You're not married, you don't have a ring on your finger. But we're seeing that there's actually an industry where men are sharing content of abusing their wives, the ones who thought that marriage would protect them. So there's a conversation to be had there. But before we go any further, why don't I invite Holly on? So Holly, when you're ready, do call in and share your views with us as a psychotherapist, like what is actually going on here. Somebody wrote, Kelechi, I hear you. I think to use gang violence and world leaders as examples is not going to help make the change we want to see. We got to look at our own personal communities. I absolutely agree. Prophet C. Art says, disgusting world we live in, agree. DCF 1994 says, this generation is done. How we teach our kids, nieces and nephews on how we see each other is the only options. Maybe look at the good examples too, because focusing on the bad will get people scared. Yeah, it is an issue though. I don't know how this and the older gen got this mashed. Yeah, so yeah, I guess that there's a lot happening there. Is Holly with us already? Yes. Hi, Holly.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Kelechi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, my pleasure. And thank you for just the work that you do and the conversations that we've had in passing, just around general things. So I wanted to get your view on this. What, first of all, let me just pose the question. How do we solve misogyny?
Listen, honestly, I don't know. Like, it's hard. I've been listening to your show so far, and I keep on being like, oh my god, I have so much to say. But then I'm like crashing out because it all feels so impossible. Because something that you said at the beginning about how people speak about racism and say, it's basically the people who create it should be the one to dismantle it. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, and it's the same with misogyny, the people who create these systems are the people who benefit from them even. And so they're never going to be the ones who are dismantling it. But it feels very much like, so I'm non-binary, but AFAB. And misogyny feels like it's something that it doesn't just impact women and AFAB people, it does massively impact men. Mm-hmm. However, it benefits men in a way that it doesn't benefit women and girls and AFAB people. Mm-hmm. But it does feel like we are the ones who speak about it the most.
Yes.
And so when it comes to dismantling it, it feels like the weight of that responsibility rests on our shoulders, whether it should or not.
Yes, and so for those, absolutely, and for those who are listening who might not know too much about the various gender identities, could you please explain to us about AFAB and being identifying as non-binary or being non-binary?
Yeah, no worries. So AFAB is just an acronym. It stands for assigned female at birth. You can also use AMAB for assigned male at birth. And being non-binary, it's kind of an umbrella term. So if we think about binary gender as in male and female, there'd be just two. Being non-binary is the umbrella term for saying anything that is not one of those things. So other people might use genderqueer, agender, gender fluid. There's so many. And so for me, when I talk about the fact that I'm non-binary, it's for me means that like I know I'm not a man, but I also know I'm not a woman. My gender exists in this weird squiggly place where I can't quite put my finger on it. It doesn't always make sense to me, but using the term non-binary and just being like, yeah, it's neither, makes more sense for how I relate to gender and my experience of it.
Yes, and so if I were to say, when we're looking at misogyny and we're talking about the fact that we essentially live in a very femme-hating society, they would still go together?
Oh, yeah, I would agree. Because I also think the ways in which misogyny negatively impacts men is when men are accused, essentially, because it is always, with accusation, of having quote unquote femme or female feminine traits.
Exactly.
It's being too emotional, too soft, um, whether it's on an emotional standpoint or whether it's in terms of like fashion and culture and how people dress and how people have their hair, men will be criticized for having feminine traits. And so it's still femme hating even when it does negatively impact men, in my opinion.
Yes. Yes. And so then from the kind of clients that you've spoken with, just broadly speaking, what kind of issues are men actually talking about in therapy?
I mean, I would say as a generalization, the male clients that I have, and I would say actually I probably have more male clients than female clients at the moment. I would say that they are the ones who we have to do the most work just at the beginning of the therapeutic process to get them in touch with their emotions and being able to describe their emotions. A lot of them, we are going right back to kind of developing emotional literacy. So,
Wow.
the understanding of emotions and being able to actually communicate them in a way that means that they can progress through the therapeutic process.
So if I were
And
to
we're
just,
going right back to that.
sorry to even interrupt you there, but to pause right there.
And it's okay.
So when we are talking about they have to first go into having a basic understanding of their emotional world. When we are then seeing grown men saying across the manosphere or just even beyond the manosphere, just saying generally, it's become part of our rhetoric that, oh, men aren't emotional, and they say it as if it's a good thing. What we're actually finding is a lack, an inability to access one's emotions.
Yeah, 100%. And to say that men aren't emotional is fundamentally untrue. Like, as human beings, we all experience emotions. If anyone could stop someone experiencing emotions, I would be out of a job. My job wouldn't exist because I'd just be like, oh, let me just do this thing and I won't feel this difficult emotion anymore. Cool, great. So that doesn't exist. And, also the idea that men don't experience emotions, the biggest killer of men under the age of 45 is suicide.
Talk about it. Could you just repeat that statistic again?
Yeah, the biggest killer of men under the age of 45 is suicide. There are about 14 men every day who die by suicide in the UK, which equates to about 3/4 of all the suicides in the UK on an annual basis are men.
And then when we hear that, which is tragic, right? We hear that. And sometimes it's used as a way for men to say, well, we're the ones dying. We're finding it so hard and nobody's listening to us. It's like, well, you have to talk and there has to be safe spaces for you to be able to share these things. So, and what would you, because I think when we were talking, you mentioned that one of your sort of radical approaches would be that every man should actually go to therapy. Everyone.
Yeah, I believe that everybody should go to therapy, but I do think, so like from a therapeutic standpoint, individual therapy can be really helpful when you're kind of addressing the social and psychological ideas and structures behind misogyny. That it would mean that every single man would have to go to therapy to dismantle misogyny on a systemic level. Every man would have to go. And so there are different types of behavior therapy that can be incredibly helpful to try and think about, oh, so I have this thought and then I behave in this way, but what if there's something that's distorted about that? What if I have distorted belief systems that are causing me to view the world in a certain way and respond to the world and respond to things that are happening and respond to things that I'm feeling in a certain way, but what if those beliefs are distorted? There are also lots of other different types of therapeutic approaches that can kind of help to dismantle or diffuse, is a word that I quite like, misogynistic thoughts. And so rather than acting on them, people can be like, oh, actually, I have more flexible ideas. Maybe this is not the truth. And also there are things that are working really well actually in within agencies and charities and programs that work a lot with domestic violence, where they're doing kind of group therapy programs. But those group therapy programs, number one, the men need to attend.
Yes.
But number two, a lot of those group therapy programs, what they really use is they work on humanizing women and femmes. Because through misogyny, women and femmes are dehumanized. But to humanize women and femmes, they have women who have been victims and survivors of abuse go and essentially act as case studies and talk to the men, which is then putting the onus on healing men on women, on the survivors, on the victims, rather than on the structures that have created the problem and created the perpetrators.
Yes, because at the end of the day, they can do all of this though. But what incentive really is there ultimately for men, broadly speaking? We're not saying all men, but broadly speaking, what incentive is there actually for men to not be, or to access their emotions? What incentive do they have to do that when society is showing them like, you grind, you can sleep when you're dead, you work, you get your house, you get your car? And especially now that we've got trad wife rhetoric as well, that's on the rise as well, at the same time as people being encouraged back into organized religion, where it's like, get your house, get your wife, get your kids, and you just do that, that's a real man. And then the other side, you've got it's like two extremes, right? Then we've got another extreme where it's just like, you don't need anybody, you just be cold, you make your money, get your car, get your this, get your that, you don't need a woman. But I actually think that one is being encouraged because it provides more young men who are available to go to war because they've got nobody in their life that they are experiencing love with. So then we've got that aspect. But ultimately, if we're thinking about solving misogyny, we're saying that, men should go to therapy, but there's no incentive for them to actually access their emotions.
No, and to be honest, most men don't self-refer and say, I'm struggling with a misogynistic rhetoric or misogynistic thoughts. They self-refer finally, because that's the other thing I find. Most of my male clients are coming to therapy as a last resort. They are no longer coping. They are having panic attacks. They are having suicidal ideation. Their lives are in many ways falling apart, and they're just not coping. And often therapy has been brought up to them multiple times by multiple people, and they've thought, no, not for me. Or they thought, well, actually, that's weak. I shouldn't be feeling anxious. So I'm just going to go and do something else to stop feeling anxious. I'm going to go and drink, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to use drugs, or all things that many of us have done, and there's no shame in doing any of those things. But I think there's a real difference in how men and people who are socialized as male and people who are socialized as female kind of relate to therapy, where people who are socialized as female, we are brought up from the beginning to like nurture and talk and discuss, the way that, girls in school will be called chatterboxes.
Yes.
Boys will be called disruptive. Girls will be called chatterboxes. Girls will be called bitchy or gossipy because they're talking about other people, which is all very demeaning language. But boys, it's, oh, boys will be boys. Oh, they've had an argument. Girls, and when my daughter was in primary school, I remember an issue that I really took with there was two head teachers, but one of the head teachers, there was an issue in her friendship group, and he said, oh, well, yeah, this is just what girls are like.
Huh?
This is just what girls are like.
And then on the flip side of that, we've also got, or as a as a continuation of that, we've also got, oh, but boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
One boy punches another boy. Oh, boys will be boys. They'll grow out of it. Which again, so then because boys will be boys, nobody asks, well, why did you do that? Why? What did it upset you? Were you angry? Why were you angry? Nobody asks those questions because they're just so dismissive. Oh, boys will be boys. This is how boys behave. So right from childhood, we have a societal structure that never asks boys the question. This is why I have so many adult male clients who don't have that emotional literacy, because from the beginning, they're not ever asked to explore their emotions, to say, well, why did I behave that way? Why did I react that way? What do I feel? Why do I feel that? Those just aren't questions that throughout society, especially when we're in either familial settings and definitely educational settings, they're not questions that are asked necessarily. And so we then have boys who grow to be men who lack emotional literacy and who are also really used to it just being okay for them to lash out.
Yes.
Because nobody's ever given them another option.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a way of also being encouraged to like mark territory and things like that. Somebody wrote here, Mr. Black Boy Joyce says, therapy is definitely looked at as a last resort. Discussing feelings has never been prioritized in a Black household, especially for boys. So that's interesting.
The amount of times I've said to my dad, hey, like, I really feel like you should go to therapy. And my dad will find every, and my dad, his best friend is a therapist. I'm a therapist. One of my sisters recently trained to be a therapist. He's surrounded by female AFAB femmes therapists. And he like talks us up like you would not believe. Also, like you said earlier about single mothers, talk about absent fathers, that's my dad. But like, less so now, I guess. This is why he talks me up. But he will do everything but go to therapy. He tries to facilitate groups of men to talk amongst themselves. But then none of them know how to talk and open up because he doesn't bring in a facilitator who could open that up because he's like, oh, no, we can do it ourselves.
I love that you mentioned that.
This is something we're going to keep inside the house.
Yes. And it might seem really mean or harsh, but I do have an issue with, there are certain people I see who start men's groups, might be dad's groups, might be whatever, but they start these groups without actually doing a lot of the work that they need to do themselves, or to have somebody in the space or in the group chats or in, the forums that they create that can actually quite literally help to hold space so the conversations that they're having in these spaces can be conducive. Otherwise, you've essentially created a cesspit where the whole, the way it's presented is, we're creating a space for men to be able to talk with each other and to do. But when you go and actually look at what they're talking about, it's extremely demeaning and it's so like cyclical. They're not expanding beyond what they already know, but at least, we see each other. What's that doing for anybody? You can't just create the group. The group needs to work.
Yeah, and it's also have a male therapist there. If it's a male-led group, have a male therapist. But it's almost like they don't want that. And it's a really, and I don't want to criticize it too much because it is a really good starting point to have a group of men who are just willing to get together and talk.
Yeah.
Especially outside of a pub.
Yes, definitely.
Also, I love pub talks. Sometimes I'm having a really hard time and I'll text my friend, I'll just text pub ? And they know that I need to talk. But, there's these men's like mental health running groups, which again, it's great, but God, like I remember when COVID happened, as if anyone would forget, but all these people who truly spiraled because they couldn't access the gym anymore. And that's men and women and non-binary people.
Yes.
Because rather than access therapy, they were just going to like push their bodies to the extreme rather than talk.
Yes. Yeah.
Because talking is seen as weak. And I guess having muscles is seen as strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially for men, it's like, what are these things that, how can I just not be seen as weak?
Yeah.
What can I do to not be seen as weak? I will do anything to not be seen as weak. But then men are really struggling.
As we see from the suicide rates, and it's really thinking about where we go from there. Essay Onway wrote here, I wonder if therapy as an academic study also has a patriarchal tinge to it, because we know that when we're thinking about the modern studies around therapists, it has been inherently anti-Black and to a certain degree very anti-femme as well. Like we know this. So when we're thinking about how do we solve misogyny? We're saying, okay, well, a lot of these people need to go to therapy. But if the therapy itself is also tinged, it's also part of a patriarchal structure, how do they break out of that? Because we are working that on the basis that the therapist that they're even working with isn't, is also switched on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real issue because, therapy, by and large, psychotherapy was built by men. If you think about Freud, I fucking hate Freud. I hate Freud so much.
So flawed, so pedo-adjacent.
About my hatred of Freud. And I had this tutor who would tell me that I had penis envy, and I was like, I don't, I just... I truly wanted to pack the whole thing in. I hate Freud. But, we think about penis envy and like hysteria being a female condition and women being inherently passive. And there's so much of the basis of therapy that is inherently patriarchal. Because we also have to think about when the historical foundations of therapy were built. And there are absolutely still a lot of therapists who love Freud.
Yeah.
I love Freud. I think Freud would be very interested in psychoanalyzing them, honestly, because it's very interesting. However, I do think that we are, my supervisor, so all therapists have to have something called supervision, so we don't just, act as lone wolves out in the world doing our own thing. We check in with our supervisor at least once a month. About just kind of supervision of our work when it's just good practice and it's something that we have to do. But I talk to my supervisor quite a lot about this, and something that she says often is that she is working with more kind of millennial age therapists now, and that she's seeing a real change, and whether that's come from how much more normalized therapy has become in our lifetime, how therapy used to be you don't talk about therapy, you don't talk about being on medication, wellness being a whole industry, which is another potential minefield.
Yes.
Full of people who do not know what they're talking about, but some people who do, but how can you tell?
Yes.
And the self-improvement industry.
Yeah.
We are finding that there are more therapists who are not falling into those kind of racist, patriarchal, just generally homophobic, transphobic, discriminatory kind of standards. People, the internet can be a cesspit, but it can also be an amazing tool. And I think, one of the reasons why I am a therapist is because I had so much bad therapy.
Yes.
So I was like, do you know what? I think I could do this. Like, I think I could do this. I think I could do this better than what I had in like the late 90s and early 2000s. I could do this better. I would not say those things. I would prefer to laugh at the things that sometimes caused people who are kind of like my age, our age and older, some of the things that we maybe experienced therapeutically and with healthcare providers. I would rather, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Yes.
Not that we're not taking it incredibly seriously, but kind of like dismantling even some of the therapeutic structures that existed with our clients in real time.
Yes. So kind of like taking the good that we can from the framework and essentially leaving the rest. But I guess what we're looking at is enough people have to do that in order for this to kind of work. But, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. And if people want to kind of follow you in your work, or how would they contact you, especially if there are men out there or, potential male clients that want to reach out, how would they do so?
So the best way to contact me is probably via email. I got rid of my website recently because, quite frankly, AI is also destroying the therapeutic industry and nobody's clicking anymore. People would especially rather go to ChatGPT than go to therapy. That's a new thing as well.
That's another conversation.
I know,
we have to have you back to discuss that as well. Can AI be can AI be a good substitute for going to actual therapy? I would already say, spoiler alert, no.
To use the word AI psychosis.
Yes. Chat,
which is really scary.
What's it? AI-induced psychosis. Yeah.
Because AI is not, can be fantastic, but often bad, mostly bad. But yeah, you can find me on the counselling directory as well. So that's a UK-wide directory that you can find me on. And also, if you were just hopping on Google and you typed in the words Holly Elizabeth Counselling, something about me would come up, even if it's just my counselling directory page or my email.
So that's Holly Elizabeth
my email
Counselling.
is Holly Elizabeth Counselling, at gmail.com.
Holly Elizabeth Counselling at gmail.com. Okay, we'll get that up for people who might be considering it. But thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Appreciate it.
No, you're super welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye. So yeah, it'll be great to hear some of your thoughts regarding what Holly shared with us this afternoon, because it's a lot. You know, I posed the question so broadly, and I think somebody said it above as well, that how do we? There are so many components when we are thinking about misogyny. When you say, how do we solve misogyny? Well, it's not going to be a one and done. There are so many things to address. And somebody already mentioned, like I said, that we have to look at the younger generation as they're coming up. But if we're looking at the younger generation and saying that they're the hope, but we're the ones who have to teach them, and we've got problems. We have got problems. So how are we planning to do this? And I thought it was very fascinating. If we're talking about misogyny, right? The inaugural episode of this conversation of The Edge, I think I posed one of the questions was about Chris Brown. Can we separate the art from the artist? And a clip of that went onto Instagram. And I was reading some of the comments, and it felt interesting. It was interesting to me to see women excusing Chris Brown's behavior. You know, they kept bringing up Rihanna. Well, Rihanna hit him, but he's done so many things since Rihanna. Clearly, the man has anger issues, right? But it's the way that they were talking about it as if, well, I'm still going to go. I'm still going to engage with his things because I want to. I mean, would you not agree? Would you agree? Let me not even say, would you not agree? Would you agree that it is essentially abuse, for instance, to know that you have a condition that can be sexually transmitted and still choose to engage in a sexual act with somebody without giving them the information, without making them aware that you have this, you have this thing? I'm not referring to Chris Brown there. I'm referring to Usher. And they're going on tour together. And I know that stadium's going to be packed. All of those stadiums are going to be packed. But didn't Usher get in trouble for giving somebody herpes? But he knowingly gave that person, he knowingly passed on herpes to a woman that was in court, that went through the courts a few years back. Is that not a form of abuse? Is that not a form of misogyny? So it isn't just the things of, women are dumb, women are stupid. It's how women or femme-identifying people are treated across the board, just on a basic level. I think that those are the things that we also need to look at. And I was saying it on my podcast, Front Page Fuckery, the most recent episode. I was saying that I would throw in there that cheating to a large degree, like consistent, persistent cheating, I would say that that's a form of abuse that's rooted in misogyny, whichever way you want to look at it. And I'm not saying that it's not, it's just men that cheat, but I'm talking about how we live in a culture where you can go and listen to certain songs, and in those songs it's normalized that, I've got a side piece, I've got another woman, and we've kind of made this a part of culture. We've made it a part of culture when I would argue that it's damaging to us. Adrienne says here, I feel the herpes scandal was downplayed and brushed under the carpet. I absolutely agree. And you also say cheating is emotional abuse. Absolutely. Absolutely. Playing with somebody's sense of reality, potentially putting them at physical risk as well because of your actions. That is abuse. Why do we glorify it? So it's not just we're looking at the extremes on this show. The Rape Academy, this man killing, these children. We're looking at all of these various things. We're looking at the manosphere. We're considering all of these things. But I think it also comes down to the day-to-day way that women women and girls are treated across the board. That is also an issue. We all do it. I find it, extra problematic sometimes when they see a young boy and immediately they're like, oh, he's going to be a heartbreaker when he grows up. He's going to be breaking some hearts. Why are you cursing the child? Why have you already spoken over his spirit, over his life, that he'll be breaking hearts? I hope he doesn't. And already saying, oh, he's going to be a ladies' man, or he loves the ladies, already kind of prescribing what this child's life is going to be like. Meanwhile, they are barely saying a goo-goo and a gaga. And you've already decided all of these things for them because of how you do not want to see the world any other way. You've decided their sexuality. You've decided their gender identity. You've decided the type of relationships and that they're going to have with people. And the power dynamics are going to be present in that relationship or in those relationships. And so for some people, it is well-meaning. It is a throwaway comment. But this is what I'm saying. The way that things carry on, or the ways in which certain behaviors and habits persist in our societies, it's not just from the overt propaganda. It's what has become deeply enshrined in our everyday culture. That is part of it. Whether you like it or not, you might get offended and be like, oh, people don't mean too much by it. But I ask you, I beg of you, break down the statement and think about what's actually being said. Do we say to girls, generally speaking, oh, she's going to be lining them up when she's older. Oh, she's going to be with all of the boys. No, because that would be bad, wouldn't it? Because, women aren't meant to do that. One man to my pum-pum, yeah. Right? That's what it's meant to be. But the boys, we've already said, oh, he's going to be a heartbreaker. Oh, he's going to have all of the girls after him. Is that all their life amounts to? I'm just asking that we consider these things. Mr. Black Boy Joyce says here, I remember reading that it's only legal to not disclose having an STI if the other person catches it. So as long as they don't get it, it's fine. Like how? So I think that would be on the basis that they take the necessary precautions if it is something that can be addressed with a barrier method of contraception, or, that they take the necessary precautions so that you do not contract anything. So then fine, you might say that they do not need to disclose anything to you. But you can't guarantee that. You can't guarantee that your barrier method or whatever is going to work. So isn't it just best to give somebody the agency and the autonomy to decide if they want to sleep with you with knowing this information, after knowing this information? They're stripped of that agency. They're stripped of that autonomy when you make the decision for them. And I feel like maybe I'm naive, but Usher is arguably a sexy guy. I don't see how, I don't see where, even if this person didn't want to sleep with him, another person, he would have said, hey, I've, got herpes or whatever. And they would probably still be like, yeah, sure. I don't know what you came to do, girl. What you came to do tonight. But I came with herpes. Whoa. So I'm so sorry, but it came to my head, so I had to sing it. My rendition. They'd still go ahead with it. So why must you choose to not disclose, sleep with them, I imagine, without contraception, and then they contract it, and then everybody's just looking at each other? It's unfair, because that would say that there's another dynamic at play. It was about the wielding of power. It was the control of the whole thing that led us to that situation. Mr. Black Boy Joyce says here, would be like saying only murder is illegal, not attempted murder. Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess that's why they give us manslaughter. Oh, they didn't mean it. Oluwabek said something like herpes needs to be disclosed. I absolutely agree. But the reason I bring this up is people are going to go to that tour. People are going to go and see Chris Brown. They're going to go and see Usher. And I'm not telling you to not do your things. All I'm saying is, when we look at their actions as men, and then to top it off, didn't Usher say recently that he hasn't got anything bad to say about Diddy? So when we're thinking about how do we solve an issue like misogyny, we also need to look at the men that we put money into. Do I want to say men or do I want to say people? Ordinarily, I'd say people that we put money into, because some of the biggest propagators and perpetuators of misogyny will find happen to be women. So we could look at that aspect. But for now, let's say that we're looking at this situation. We need to look at the men who don't feel that they need to hold other men to account. Even if you don't feel like lacing baby oil with some kind of drug is a bad thing. You don't feel like, all of these things that happen are a bad thing. We all watched that video of Cassie getting dragged up and down that corridor, essentially getting stomped out by Diddy. Surely, if you cared about your career, you would think about that and be like, maybe this isn't where I say that I don't see an issue with Diddy. That was an issue there. And who was it that came out? Was it Kelly Price? Kelly Price, after the video came out, she was like, oh, we don't know what he was going through. We have to pray for him. The way that we infantilize men and we strip them of any accountability. If you imagine that we were at a party and accountability is a platter or like a tray of hors d'oeuvres, we rush the hors d'oeuvres of accountability right past men, no matter what happens. Just rush it right past them. You don't need to eat any of that. You're allergic. You don't need to eat any accountability hors d'oeuvres. You're fine. We'll stuff our face for you. You don't need to eat it. Same with Jay-Z. I know that's you lot's boy. I know that you love him down. I know that you love a Sean Carter. But Russell Simmons, they're looking for that guy. They are the people in government are looking for that guy. And he's hiding out in Bali, to the best of my knowledge, when I last checked. Russell Simmons is hiding out in Bali for a reason. And yet, during lockdown, Tidal had an event. They were trying to do like a panel discussion or some kind of fireside chat with Russell Simmons, patching him in across the internet. And it was like the rapey elephant in the room. We're not going to address why he's staying in Bali. We're not going to talk about why he's there. We're just going to pretend like we need to hear from this mogul that can't touch American soil, that they're having to serve him court orders in very wily, sneaky ways because he's trying to avoid them. So even the most powerful men that could say, hey, this isn't okay, they group together. And we know that money talks. So shouldn't we be moving our money away from the people who want to encourage misogyny? I'm guessing that people are generally saying the answer is no. They'll continue to support what they want to support. And as long as these people have money, they will continue doing what they're doing because it's positive reinforcement. If you lot aren't going to get me the hell out of here or stop supporting the work that I make because of the ways that I treat women, then I'll continue treating women exactly how I've been treating them. It's fine. And so I don't think this is the last time that we'll be broaching a subject like this. There'll be different ways to go about it, but I did think it was important to have the conversation today. Prophet says here, unfortunately, when you have the status of Usher, there is a high possibility someone will take that risk. I agree. And that's literally what I was saying. Like, somebody is willing to take that risk with you. You didn't have to subject somebody unknowingly to that risk because there will be, I can bet you £1,000 that Usher could say to 200 women, hey, I've got herpes. Do you want to sleep with me? And 75% of them will say yes. I know that. With my heart and my soul, I know that 75% of those women would say yes. I'm so sure of it. So you didn't have to go for the 25% or one of the 25% that probably that wouldn't have been her bag. But instead, you'd rather unknowingly put her in that situation. Yeah, exactly. Black Rob says, Usher was defending Diddy in a recent video too about, I don't have a bad word to say about him. I've got at least 17 bad words to say about Diddy. So you could even borrow some of mine. Anybody who watched that or read about what was happening in the court case surely should have some bad words to say. And I fear that when Diddy does come out, because he's not going to serve all of that time, he will be more powerful than ever. Because now he's seen how he could get got. he's going to take the necessary precautions. And I feel so sorry for anybody he's going to interact with once he gets out of that place, because it is going to be terrible. And quite frankly, we will only have ourselves to blame for that. So we'll go into the last story very quickly and kind of call it there. But I'm really glad that you were able to join me today. I mean, I'm even glad that I joined you, because on the subject of concerts and gigs and going to watch people, tickets, from what I understand, were going to go on sale at 12 noon for, is it the Crystal Palace? Something, the Roots? It's taking place at Crystal Palace Bowl. 9th of August. Anthony Hamilton, Music Soul Child, all of the people there. But I really just want to see Anthony Hamilton. I love that man. Like, I love his music. And he hasn't been to London to do a concert of his own for years. I think every concert that I've known of that he's had in London, I've been there throughout the years. That's my bag. That's like one of my favorite genres of music. But he hasn't been here for years, and I was really looking forward to seeing him. So even though I knew that the tickets were going on sale and I worried about whether I would be able to get a ticket, I showed up for you all. That's what I did. So remember that I'm committed to this. Brent, I hope you're listening. I chose you over Anthony Hamilton. Let that count for something. Yeah, you better laugh. Yeah? Just remember that in the future when I'm asking for links, that when the love of my life, Anthony Hamilton, it was announced that he would be singing a couple songs in August, I said, no, Brent needs me. But yeah, to close, like I said, we might, touch on this later on, or the conversation will carry on in the other shows. So please do tune in to the other shows that are happening on The Pulse, because we've got a fantastic lineup of people who are all discussing wonderful, wonderful things that you need to get involved with, from football to reality TV shows to sex and relationships to books. So you absolutely want to get involved with The Pulse and get involved with everybody else's shows. And like I said, the last story that we were looking at was the father of 7 or the father that killed seven of his children and another child, Shamar Elkin, a man in Louisiana, killed 8 children Sunday morning in a shooting that authorities described as a domestic violence incident. He was later killed by police after he fled in a carjacked vehicle. Ordinarily, we would be looking at this as a case of police brutality. I don't know how you lot are seeing it, knowing what he's done. The children were killed were 3 boys and 5 girls, ages 3 to 11. Their mothers identified the children as Jayla Elkins, Shayla Elkins, and Kayla Pugh. Layla Pugh, Markadon Pugh, Soraya Snow, Kadarian Snow, and Braylon Snow. And 7 of the children who were killed were found in the home, and the 8th was found dead on a back roof. The police said, we know it's a domestic nature, that it's domestic in nature. We know his wife is involved, and she is the mother of at least 7 of the children, with the 8th being a family friend. It appears many of the children were shot in their sleep. Bordelon said, that's the officer that was speaking about it. Most of them were shot in the head, he said. And I don't know how much more we have to say. That literally sums up what I'm saying. Like, what kind of evil is that? And you wouldn't call that emotional? That's not emotional? Or would you say that that's a lack of emotion to ages 3 to 11 in their head? Execution? What did they do? And so until we start looking at not praising, not celebrating men's inability, because ultimately that's what it is, an inability to access one's emotions, the emotions that we equate with femininity, the emotions that we equate with vulnerability, we're going to keep at this cycle. We think that, what's happening geopolitically is separate to what's happening on this level, as if misogyny isn't linked with these things, but it absolutely is. And the final thought I'll leave everyone with is, when we are looking at the manosphere, yes, we are looking at misogyny. Yes, we are looking at all of this, but we are also looking at a capitalist system that knows that the only way to get men and boys to be available to go to war in order to protect the assets of the elite, of the hoarding 1%, the only way to get them to be available for that is for them to have nothing to live for. So we will then need to push out the kind of propaganda that tells them you don't need anyone, you need to be like a lone wolf, you train hard, you focus on you don't need any woman distracting you, girls are distractions. All of this, so they never settle down, never know love, and then when they are drafted, they're ready to go. Even before they're drafted, they're ready to go because they were looking for a reason to die, because they've got nothing to live for. So none of this is by chance. Everything is connected because we are all connected. So when we see something as not being our issue, it in fact is our issue, and it's going to be more clear that it's our issue down the line. But like I said, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. I've been Kelechi Okafor, and this has been The Edge, part of the Pulse Network. That's also part of The New Black. And I hope that you'll join me next week as well, Tuesday at 12 noon. If you check my Instagram, I'll be putting up the post as to what we'll likely be discussing. And I'd love to hear more of you call in. And if you can't call in because you're at work and you're sneakily listening to this, well, please do engage with the chat and share your opinions there as well. So yeah, that's been it for The Edge. Did I tell you my Instagram is at Kelechnikov, by the way? And if you want to support me, my books are on the side there for you to see in case you want to read any of my work. But yeah, that's it. This has been The Edge, where we are looking right over that cliff to eternity. Are we going to soar, or are we just going to drop down? Thank you. Bye.